The stars shone cold and distant over the Vorin homeworld, a planet of jagged mountains and endless glassy oceans. From her position on the observation deck of the command tower, Lyra watched the horizon. The pale light of the two suns reflected off her armor, highlighting her sharp, elegant features. She had always been proud of her strength, her skills, her mind. Among the Vorin, she was a leader, a strategist, and a warrior. Yet, deep inside, a quiet unease lingered, a fear she did not show to anyone. Humans. The word alone caused her stomach to tighten. Her people had long observed humans from afar, cataloging their behaviors, their struggles, their unusual ways of thinking. They were soft in many ways, she had been told. Unpredictable. Fragile. Yet somehow, persistent. There was a stubborn spark in them that her logic-driven mind could not fully measure. And now, one human was coming here. Not as a soldier, not as a spy, but as a diplomat. Captain Elias Mercer, they said, was a man of unusual skill. His reputation had traveled light years. A brilliant strategist, a survivor of countless dangers, and a man who carried a calmness in chaos that few beings could match. Lyra did not trust calmness. Calmness, she believed, could hide weakness. "Commander Lyra," a voice called from behind her. It was Sergeant Karen, her second in command. His exoskeleton gleamed darkly under the twin suns. "The human ship has entered orbit. They request a formal welcome." Lyra turned, her eyes narrowing. "I will greet him," she said simply, her voice steady. She did not want to feel her pulse rise, but it did anyway. Her claws clicked against the metallic floor as she approached the landing bay. The ship that descended was small, sleek, and entirely unarmed, or so it appeared. The hatch opened, and out stepped the human. Elias Mercer. He was ordinary, shorter than she expected, lean but strong, with hair the color of autumn leaves and eyes the shade of storm clouds. Yet, there was something in his posture, a quiet confidence that did not need to announce itself. He looked at her with calm curiosity. "Commander Lyra," he said, bowing slightly in the way her people found unusual. "It is an honor to meet you." She inclined her head, keeping her expression neutral. "Captain Mercer, welcome to Vorin Prime. I am assigned to accompany you during your stay. Any breach of protocol will be your responsibility." He nodded, accepting her words without fear. That alone unsettled her. She was used to beings flinching under her gaze. But this human, he did not falter. The first day was formal. Meetings, speeches, tours of the city, introductions to the other council members. Lyra watched him carefully, noting every gesture, every reaction. He asked questions that seemed simple at first but carried layers of thought. What precautions are in place against internal rebellion? How do you manage resources in extreme climates? Lyra was impressed, though she did not admit it to herself. Humans were supposed to be weak, reactive, and emotional. But this one was precise, careful, and clever. Her unease grew. She was supposed to be in charge, to judge the human, to ensure the safety of her people. And yet, she felt challenged. The first incident came unexpectedly. During a tour of the outer city, a cargo transport malfunctioned. Crates filled with volatile energy cells teetered dangerously on the edge of a loading platform. The workers froze, unsure how to act. Lyra immediately moved to order a Vorin team to stabilize the load, expecting the human to step aside. Instead, Elias Mercer acted. Without hesitation, he approached the unstable stack, studying it quickly. He touched the crates lightly, checking weight distribution, and then instructed the nearest workers in calm, precise steps. Within moments, the pile was secure. Not a single crate fell, and no one was harmed. Lyra blinked, surprised. His hands were human soft, not equipped for heavy labor, but his mind. His mind was something else entirely. He had solved the problem faster and more efficiently than even her elite teams could have. She said nothing, though her chest tightened. Humans were supposed to be fragile. They were supposed to fail when danger came. Yet this one, that evening, during a formal dinner in the council chambers, Lyra found herself studying him again. He did not boast, did not seek attention. He laughed quietly at clever remarks, smiled politely, and observed everything with sharp eyes. "You seem quiet," Elias said, as they sat across from each other. "Do Vorin leaders not speak much at meals?" Lyra's tail flicked in irritation. "We do not waste words on trivialities." He inclined his head, unbothered. "Efficiency is admirable, but silence can also hide fear." Her eyes narrowed. "And what do you see, Captain Mercer?" He smiled faintly. Curiosity. She wanted to scoff. Instead, she found herself wondering if he truly understood her, or if he simply had a way of seeing through appearances. The real test came on the second day. A sudden attack by a rogue alien faction, the Krell, struck the city's perimeter. Their ships fired indiscriminately, and panic spread quickly. Lyra immediately called her units to defensive positions, expecting chaos and confusion from the humans. Elias Mercer, however, remained calm. He moved through the command center, issuing suggestions, analyzing enemy patterns, and predicting attacks before they occurred. He worked alongside her, not behind her, not as a subordinate, but as an equal in strategy. Lyra felt something stir inside her, a mixture of fear, respect, and curiosity. This human was not like others. He did not panic. He did not falter. He calculated, adapted, and acted with precision. By the time the Krell ships were repelled, the city had suffered minimal damage. Lyra's teams were in awe, and even the council murmured their approval. Alone with Elias afterward, she struggled to speak. You are human, yet you fight like a Vorin general." He shrugged, casually wiping dust from his uniform. "I fight like someone who refuses to fail. Humans, we have our weaknesses, but we also have persistence. And sometimes, persistence is enough." Lyra studied him, her mind whirling. He was right. Humans were often underestimated, dismissed as fragile or unfit. But there was a strength in them, raw and unpredictable, that her people could not always measure. The night was quiet after the attack, but Lyra could not sleep. She wandered the observation deck again, staring at the stars. Elias's words echoed in her mind. Persistence is enough. Could it be that she had been wrong about humans all along? She clenched her fists. She could not allow herself to think of the human as more than a diplomat. Yet the images of him in action, calculating, fearless, and calm, under pressure, would not leave her. Lyra's fear was not for herself. It was for what she did not understand. What if humans were not only equal to her people, but could surpass them in ways no one expected? Her heart, which she rarely allowed to betray her thoughts, thumped loudly in her chest. She hated the feeling. She hated the vulnerability. And yet, she could not deny the admiration building quietly inside her. Tomorrow, they would continue the summit. Tomorrow, she would observe him again. And perhaps, just perhaps, she would see more of the truth behind the human strength. For now, she looked at the stars and whispered to herself, though no one could hear, "I do not fear failure, but I fear what I do not understand." And in the silent distance of the cosmos, Captain Elias Mercer's calm voice lingered in her mind. Persistence is enough. The distant suns of Vorin Prime had just begun to rise. painting the jagged mountains with streaks of amber and silver. Lyra stood on the balcony of her quarters, her mind still racing from the events of the previous day. The attack by the Krell had shaken the council and the city, but what unsettled her most was not the danger, it was the human. Captain Elias Mercer had moved through the chaos with the ease of someone born into it. He had not flinched when lasers cut through the air, or when her soldiers faltered. He had simply acted. Lyra found herself replaying every moment, every decision he had made, every subtle move of his hands and eyes. And she could not deny it. She was intrigued. The summit was scheduled to continue in the outlying research station, a fortified installation built into the cliffs above the Northern Ocean. Lyra was assigned to accompany Elias personally, partly to protect him, partly to observe his behavior. She still feared human unpredictability, but she also needed to understand it. The journey to the station was tense. The transport ship moved swiftly over jagged cliffs, and the wind howled outside the reinforced hull. Lyra sat rigidly, her claws lightly tapping the floor. Elias, seated across from her, did not speak. Instead, he studied a small device, scanning topographic maps of the region. "You are very focused," Lyra said finally. He looked up, smiling faintly. "I like to know the terrain. You never know what might happen out here." Lyra frowned. "You assume danger comes even when none is visible?" "Not assume," he corrected. "Prepare. Humans learn to survive by expecting the unexpected." The words made her narrow her eyes. She had trained her entire life to expect the unexpected. Yet something in his calm confidence made her feel unsteady. The transport landed without incident, but the station itself was eerily quiet. Security drones patrolled the perimeter, their sensors scanning for any sign of intrusion. Lyra noticed that the human did not hesitate to inspect every entry point, every corridor. "Do you really need to check every door?" she asked. "Every door is a potential threat," Elias replied. "We cannot ignore possibilities." Lyra shook her head. Humans were overly cautious, she thought. Yet, when the alarms finally blared, her own pulse quickened, and Elias was ready. The intruders came swiftly, a rogue faction of alien mercenaries, armed with energy rifles and cloaking devices. They had somehow bypassed the station's external defenses and were moving through the corridors, silent and deadly. "Positions," Lyra commanded, her voice cold and sharp. Soldiers moved into defensive formations, but fear was in their eyes. Elias did not wait. He moved beside her, analyzing the layout, predicting the intruders' paths. "Left flank," he said. "The main corridor is a trap. Lead them to the side hall, and we can isolate them." Lyra's jaw tightened. She had trained hundreds of soldiers in tactical maneuvers, and yet this human's instinct matched hers. Better. Even he anticipated their enemies' moves before the first shots were fired. Together, they led the attackers into the side hall. Using a combination of quick thinking and improvisation, Elias activated a security panel to seal doors, forcing the mercenaries into a confined space. Lyra marveled at his precision, at the way his human body moved gracefully despite the danger. He was soft, fragile by her species' standards, but his mind, it was sharp, lethal, even. The battle was intense. Laser fire echoed through the station's halls, sparks flying as walls absorbed impacts. Lyra fought with her usual skill, blocking attacks and neutralizing intruders with calculated precision. But it was Elias who made the difference. He did not fight like a soldier. He fought like a thinker. He predicted, adapted, and turned each move of the enemy against them. When one mercenary tried to flank them, Elias used a nearby console to drop the ceiling hatch, trapping the attacker. When another tried to fire blindly around a corner, Elias's voice called precise instructions to the soldiers, allowing them to counter without hesitation. By the time the final intruder fell, Lyra was breathing hard, her armor scratched and scorched. Elias stood calmly, brushing dust from his uniform, as if the battle had been nothing more than a minor inconvenience. She stared at him, a mixture of awe and disbelief in her eyes. You are human," she said, her voice almost a whisper. He turned, meeting her gaze steadily. "Yes," he said, "and humans are more than they seem. We adapt. We survive. And sometimes, that is enough to turn the tide." Lyra's mind raced. She had fought countless battles, faced deadly creatures, and ruthless opponents. And yet this human had shown a kind of strength she had never encountered before. Not just physical or tactical, but something deeper, something enduring. After the attack, the station was secured. But the tension remained. Lyra and Elias walked along the observation deck, overlooking the jagged cliffs and endless ocean below. The air was heavy with the smell of ozone and burnt metal. "You didn't hesitate," Lyra said. "Not once. You could have been killed." Elias shrugged. "I calculated the risks. I knew what I could manage. Humans have a way of staying calm in danger. We call it focus. You make it sound simple." "It is simple," he said softly. "Not easy, but simple. Anyone can learn to survive if they are willing to think clearly, move carefully, and act without fear." Lyra studied him, the sunlight catching the storm gray of his eyes. She had trained her entire life. Yet in this human, she saw something different. Strength that was not born of muscle or weaponry, but of mind and spirit. The next few days were a mixture of diplomacy and survival training. Lyra found herself observing him constantly, testing her own assumptions about humans. He was not reckless. He was not weak. He was adaptable. When faced with unexpected hazards, he thought quickly, acted decisively, and inspired confidence in those around him. During a simulated emergency drill, a sudden landslide blocked their path in the mountain corridor. The soldiers panicked, unsure how to proceed. Elias assessed the situation, noticing weak points in the debris. "Use the lower rocks to brace a path," he instructed. "Move slowly, one at a time. We'll support each other." Lyra watched, amazed, as the humans and Vorin soldiers followed his instructions. Step by step, they navigated the dangerous path. No one injured. Every movement he made was precise. Every command clear. When they reached safety, Lyra realized she was smiling. Not for herself, but for him. She had feared taking a human mate because of what she believed about weakness, but here was proof that humans could be more than capable. The true test came when the planet's environment itself became the threat. A sudden storm, rare in this region, swept across the cliffs with ferocious wind and driving rain. Equipment began to fail, communications cut out, and the team was stranded far from the station. Lyra's instincts screamed danger. The terrain was treacherous, and even she could not control the forces of nature. She looked to Elias, expecting hesitation. Instead, he stepped forward calmly, scanning the landscape. "We can reach shelter if we move carefully," he said. "Follow my path. Trust your footing. We'll get through this." Step by step, they navigated rock slides, flooded paths, and sudden drops. When one of the Vorin soldiers slipped, Elias caught him with a strong, precise grip, his human strength compensating for the soldier's larger frame. Lyra could not believe her eyes. This human, whom she had once feared, now seemed almost superhuman, not in brute force, but in courage, clarity, and resilience. By the time they reached a safe cave, soaked and exhausted, Lyra realized something profound. Her fear had not been of the human himself, but of what he represented. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but unpredictability did not mean weakness. They were capable of greatness, of strength beyond measure, if they dared to act. And Elias, he had dared. That night, Lyra sat beside the fire in the cave, watching the flames flicker against the walls. Elias tended to minor injuries. Moving with quiet efficiency, she found herself studying him again, not as a diplomat, not as a human, but as something more. "You are different from what I expected," she said finally. He looked at her, smiling faintly. "I hope that is not an insult." "No," she said firmly. "It is a truth. You are stronger than I imagined. Not in muscle, but in mind, in spirit. I underestimated you." Elias's eyes softened. "It is easy to underestimate humans. We do not always appear strong, but we endure. We fight, not because we are the largest or fastest, but because we refuse to give up." Lyra's chest tightened. She had feared taking a human mate, believing she could not trust them, believing they were fragile and unworthy. But now, she saw the truth. Strength came in many forms, and she had seen it in him. For the first time, she felt not fear, but respect. And respect, she knew, was the beginning of trust. As the fire crackled and the storm raged outside, Lyra silently acknowledged the change within herself. She would no longer fear this human. She would watch, learn, and perhaps tomorrow would bring new challenges, political tensions, dangerous missions, and the unknown still waited. But tonight she understood the moment of truth. Humans were capable of greatness, and Elias Mercer had shown her that with every step, every choice, every act of courage, for the first time, Lyra felt something she had never admitted before: curiosity mixed with admiration, and deep beneath it all, the faintest spark of something more. The twin suns of Voron Prime had barely risen when Lyra and Elias prepared to leave the cave. The storm had passed, leaving jagged cliffs, slick with rain and mist curling over the ocean below. The human moved with quiet confidence, checking every step and surveying the landscape with a sharp, calculating eye. Lyra watched him, a strange mix of admiration and something warmer stirring inside her. She had feared taking a human mate, fearing weakness, unpredictability, and fragility. But now, she understood. Humans were strong, in ways that her people often overlooked, and Elias Mercer had proven it. Not through sheer power, but through courage, intelligence, and unwavering resolve. Their journey back to the research station was tense. Word had come from the Council that the Krell faction had regrouped and planned a larger strike, aiming to destabilize the summit. Lyra's entire command had been mobilized, and she was expected to take charge, yet she did not hesitate to follow Elias's advice. "Your people rely on structure," Elias said quietly as they navigated the treacherous cliffs. "But flexibility will give us an advantage. The Krell will expect rigid tactics, not adaptive strategy." Lyra considered his words. It was true. Her instincts told her to fortify, to block every path, to control every unit. But Elias's calm reasoning offered something different, a way to turn the enemy's assumptions against them. By the time they reached the station, Lyra had made a decision. She would trust him. Fully. The council chambers were filled with tension. Alien representatives from neighboring star systems watched silently, their eyes heavy with suspicion. Humans were still a new presence in the galaxy, and many feared they were weak and unworthy of alliances. Lyra's voice cut through the murmurs. "The Krell will strike soon. Our response must be swift, coordinated, and unpredictable." She turned to Elias, gesturing for him to take her side. "Captain Mercer has a plan that maximizes our chances. I suggest we listen." The room fell silent. Elias stepped forward, projecting confidence and clarity. "We divide our forces," he explained, "using mobility, deception, and environmental advantage. The Krell expect us to defend the station directly. We will use the terrain and staggered attacks to isolate and neutralize them before they can reach the Council." Lyra could see doubt in some faces, but she also saw sparks of curiosity. Humans were underestimated, yes, but here was proof that they could think beyond convention. She felt a surge of pride for Elias, and, she admitted quietly to herself, something more than pride. The battle began before the summit could conclude. Krell's ships tore through the atmosphere, firing energy blasts that lit the sky in green and violet streaks. Soldiers scrambled, and the council members were hurried to secure areas. Elias moved calmly, directing the Vorin units with precision. Lyra was beside him, coordinating movements, trusting him to guide decisions, even when her instincts screamed otherwise. As predicted, the Krell fell into their traps. Hidden batteries and natural choke points slowed them, while squads under Elias's direction isolated key enemies. Lyra witnessed the human's genius firsthand. He anticipated every move, adapting in real time to counter the unpredictable alien tactics. When one Krell commander attempted a surprise flank, Elias's voice rang out clear and commanding. "Intercept at Sector 7. Use the terrain to your advantage. Remember, slow and steady." The Vorin soldiers obeyed flawlessly. Within minutes, the enemy's formation crumbled. Lyra could not stop herself from feeling exhilaration and gratitude. The battle reached its climax when the Krell leader attempted a desperate attack on the council chamber itself. Lyra and Elias led a small strike team, cutting through guards and barriers with precision. It was then that Lyra saw Elias's true strength. Not just his mind, but his ability to inspire and protect. As they reached the chamber, a massive energy blast knocked Lyra off her feet. Pain shot through her arm as she tried to rise. Before she could react further, Elias had pulled her back, shielding her with his own body. She felt the strength of his arms, human but unyielding, steady in the face of danger. "Move!" he shouted. His eyes locked on the enemy. "We finish this. Together." Lyra nodded, something stirring deep within her chest. Together. Not separate. Not underestimating one another, but united. They advanced, side by side, outmaneuvering and defeating the last of the Krell attackers. When the final Krell ship was disabled, silence fell. The council chambers were battered, the stations scarred, but the delegates were safe. Lyra's chest heaved with exertion, but her gaze found Elias, standing calmly, unshaken, his human eyes bright with resolve. You were incredible," she said softly, still catching her breath. Elias smiled faintly. "We were incredible. Humans are strong, yes, but strength is nothing without cooperation. You trusted me, and we acted as one. That is what made the difference." Lyra's tail flicked unconsciously. She had feared humans, feared weakness, feared unpredictability, but she had been wrong. Humans were not weak, they were resilient, clever, and capable of greatness in ways even she had never imagined. And Elias, he had shown her all of it. After the battle, the council formally recognized the success of the summit and praised the collaboration between humans and Vorin. Lyra stood quietly beside Elias as the speeches continued. Her people saw him as a remarkable human, but she saw more. She saw courage, intellect, patience, and an inner strength that matched and even complemented her own. That evening, on the observation deck overlooking the calm seas, Lyra finally spoke. "Captain Mercer," she said, her voice unusually soft. I feared taking a human mate. I believed you were weak, fragile, unpredictable." Elias tilted his head, curious. "And now?" "Now." She paused, studying him. "I see strength. Not just strength in battle, but strength in mind and spirit. You have proven that humans can endure, adapt, and excel where many others would fail. You have my respect, my trust, and perhaps something more." Elias's eyes softened. He stepped closer, maintaining a respectful distance. "You have nothing to fear from me, Lyra. I do not ask for trust lightly, but I promise I will never betray it. Strength comes in many forms, and together, we can face anything. Lyra's heart thumped, her mind racing. She had spent her life fearing weakness in others, fearing unpredictability, fearing the unknown. But now, she understood that strength was not always visible in muscle or armor. It could be in persistence, intelligence, courage, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. And she had seen it all in him. The next days were filled with celebrations and new alliances. Humans gained respect across Vorin Prime and neighboring systems, and Lyra found herself at Elias's side more often than protocol required. Together, they planned joint missions, explored new territories, and negotiated with alien species that had previously dismissed humanity. But it was not just duty that brought her close, it was admiration, respect, and a growing bond she could not ignore. In every action, in every decision, Elias demonstrated the qualities she had feared humans lacked. Yet here he was, living proof that her assumptions had been wrong. One evening, as the suns set over the jagged cliffs, Lyra and Elias stood together, watching the colors shift across the ocean below. The battle was over, the summit a success, and yet something lingered between them. A quiet understanding, a shared recognition of each other's worth. "You have changed my mind," Lyra admitted finally, her voice almost a whisper. "And you have changed mine," Elias replied, smiling. "I have seen strength in your people, in your courage, and in your heart. But most of all, I have seen the value of trust, and what it can create when it is given freely." Lyra nodded. For the first time, she did not fear the future. She did not fear taking a human mate. She had witnessed true strength, and it had come in a form she could never have anticipated. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the cliffs, Lyra realized that fear had been replaced by something far greater: hope. Hope for unity, hope for cooperation, and hope for a bond that went beyond species, beyond expectation, beyond fear. She turned to Elias, a faint smile on her lips. "Perhaps humans are more than I imagined." "They are," he said softly, matching her smile. "And together, we can be even more." The wind swept over the cliffs, carrying the promise of a future where humans and Vorin stood side by side, stronger together than they could ever be apart. Lyra felt it in her chest, a sense of purpose, trust, and admiration for this human who had shown her the true meaning of strength. And in that moment, she knew she had nothing to fear, because she had seen his true strength.